First place was he was crucified, there was a garden, and in the garden a new sepulchre, wherein was never man yet laid. That doesn't bother you too much because you've heard that so many times. What we're going to read now won't bother you at all, but you've never heard what it's talking about. Turn to Matthew, the 2nd chapter. Now, you've got to remember what we started with tonight, because we'll be back there in 2 or 3 weeks, and then you'll be up to snuff and ready to understand it. But I give you my word, I don't think, unless I'm wrong, if you are, happy are you, but I give you my word that that is something you don't understand. Now it says when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea. Now if you'll study the Church of Jesus Christ, the Latter-day Saints, old Joe Smith said Jesus was born in Jerusalem. Boy kind of blew it. It says right here he's born in Bethlehem. Questions that are going to come up tonight will be involved with this that you're going to need to understand. So if you don't have it highlighted, make sure you have it in Bethlehem. Why would it be Bethlehem? That was the town of David's nativity. Nativity, that's the place where he originated. That's the place of his ancestry. In those days, Herod the king, in the days of Herod the king, and behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem. Question is, when? And that's the answers we're going to get to tonight. Saying, where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and are come to worship him. And Herod the king had heard these things, and he was troubled, and all Israel with him. And when they gathered all the chief priests and scribes of the people together, he demanded of them where Christ should be born. Now they ask, where is he that is King of the Jews? He asked, where is Christ to be born? Are they two different things? Really, actually, no, it's just a different appellation. They said unto him, in Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it is written by the prophet, and thou, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, art not thou the least amongst the princes of Judah? For out of thee shall come a governor that shall rule my people Israel. Then Herod, when he had privily called the wise men, inquired of them diligently what time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem and said, go and search diligently for the young child, and when ye have found him, bring the word again, that I may come and worship him also. He belonged to the Democratic Party. When they had heard the king, they departed, and lo, the star which they saw in the east went before them, till it came and stood over where the young child was. And they saw the star, and they rejoiced with exceeding great joy. And when they were come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary, his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. When they had opened their treasures, they presented unto him gifts of gold and frankincense and myrrh. And being warned of God in a vision, in a dream, that they should not return to Herod, they departed into their own country another way. Now, there was another event that took place that a lot of times we get confused. When Jesus was born, what is the most sensational thing you know of the night of his birth? Luke 2. That's what I thought you'd say. You're on the broad whack. In Luke, the 2nd chapter, it does say, and it came to pass in those days that there was a decree from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be taxed, after the taxing was first made when Cyrenius was governor of Syria. And all went to be taxed, every man to his own city, and Joseph also went up to Galilee, or from Galilee, out of the city of Nazareth into Judea, unto the city of David. Have you noticed where Joseph lived? Nazareth. We'll be talking about that a little bit tonight. Where did he go? To the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, verse 4. because he was of the house and lineage of David, to be taxed with his wife Mary, an espoused wife, being great with child. And so it was that when they were there, the days were accomplished that she should be delivered, and she brought forth her firstborn son. Now here's what you don't know. And wrapped him in swaddling clothes, and laid him in a manger, because there was no room for them in the inn. Two events mentioned here that a lot of people don't see as diametrically opposed to reason and sanity that we'll discuss. There was in the same country shepherds abiding in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night. How many years passed by from the discussion in Matthew 2 and the discussion that's taking place in Luke 2? Now you're close as anybody's going to be 2 to 3 years. How do you know that this wasn't the night in which Jesus was born?
Because Herod had all the 2-year-olds in that range.
Now, yes, it's exactly right. What else? He was wrapped in swaddling clothes. Where? One of the strangest events that takes place is that what Jesus was wrapped in, we don't know much about. Now, Joseph of Arimathea was a disciple who secretly had served the Lord but did not have enough courage and had been intimidated by the Jews, and therefore would not be a public disciple of Jesus, who came and took Jesus down from the tree. In John 19:38 through 42, he took Jesus down and chose to bring extravagant spices, verse 39, which was an association of royalty that Nicodemus was expressing that Joseph agreed to. Joseph's tomb was in a garden, and it's the same concept that was mentored to us in the tomb in which Joseph, the prophet of Israel, who had come to Egypt to save the world of starvation, had prepared for his father when he came. He told the Jews to prepare his father for burial. Now, when the Egyptians prepared a man for burial of great might and dignity and rank, they wrapped him in swaddling clothes. Why? No, ma'am, but real close.
Didn't they put the senses and stuff in those rags with him? Didn't they put the fragrances in there with him?
Well, they could, and that the fragrances would be fitted around that. But why swaddling clothes? Because the word swaddle is the Hebrew word which means dying. They are the clothes of a dead man. Why would that be something that Joseph would have Jacob buried in? Of course, he was dead, but why else? And that's the secret that we don't know about. What was Jacob going to do? Well, the Egyptians always, when they mummified people, put them in swaddling clothes for the same reason that Jacob came to have on swaddling clothes, the same reason that Jesus wore swaddling clothes, the same reason that when he came from the cross, Joseph wrapped him in swaddling clothes, then put linen on him. Where was Jesus going? to Egypt. Why was he going to Egypt? Our boy Herod got on a rampage. He was going to kill every Jewish male 2 years and younger. Why? Because the king had been born. When Mary gave birth to Jesus, why did she wrap him in swaddling clothes? That's the grave clothes of a dead man.
As a sign that he was the Christ.
To whom? That's true, but you only get 50% of it. To whom? When the angel came to the shepherds that night, they said, you're going to find somebody that's got 3 signs by which you're going to know who they are. 1, he's going to be in a manger. Who would ever expect some baby to be in a place where you feed cows and pigs and hogs? It's just the opposite of sanity. He was in a cave, and that cave was where sometimes it would be more normal for children to be born, but this was the cave of Bethlehem. But he also would have on swaddling clothes.
So there was no putting the manger in the river Jordan or whatever or something?
No, there was nothing. No, that was a vessel. Now, let's go here. So we got this angel, and he comes down and he finds this boy. He finds these shepherds, verse 8. And there were in the same country shepherds abiding in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night. And lo, the angel of the Lord came upon them. And the glory of the Lord shone round about them, and they were sore afraid. And the angel said unto them, fear not, for behold, I bring you good tidings of great joy, which shall be to all people. For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, which is Christ the Lord. And this shall be a sign unto you. Well, there might have been more boys born that night. There might have been more boys born in Bethlehem that night. But there was only one. This angel said, you could tell by this sign. Ye shall find the babe wrapped in death clothes.
Now Mary would have had to have brought these death clothes with her. I doubt they were just laying around in the manger. Right.
So no, because you don't know the purpose of swaddling clothes. If you go to the Middle East, you'll find out that when people, even they claim today, take a long journey where there is a serious possibility of death or dismemberment, they wrap the middle of their body in linen strips called swaddling clothes. The reason being, these linen strips can be taken off of the body of the individual in death, dismemberment, broken bones, whatever the case is, and they have a way to preserve the body till they can get to a place that it can be buried honorably. The swaddling clothes, and it was thick. They would wrap it around the body. They still do this today, according to what I can find out in history. When they would wrap the swaddling, who would have wrapped herself in swaddling? Well, I gave it away, didn't I? Why? She's about 9.5 months pregnant. So what did she expect was going to happen? She didn't say, Joseph, I got a headache, I can't go tonight. She didn't say, hey man, can't you tell I'm about to have a baby? There's no way we can go. What Joseph said, well, you won't get me killed. She just, whether she rode on a horse, whether she rode on a camel, whether she rode on a donkey, as far as I know, I don't know. But she prepared herself for death. When she then got to Bethlehem and Christ was born, the clothing with which she prepared. Because remember, the Egyptians had done this for years when they mummified bodies. It was shown when they buried Jacob that Joseph had him wrapped in swaddling clothes. Why? Joseph said Jacob is going on a long journey. Where was Jesus, Austin, going to be going? No. Yeah, well, you better pay a little more attention. I'll show you. Where was Jesus going? Going to Egypt. Why was he going to Egypt? No, he went to Bethlehem for the census. Why was he going to Egypt?
To escape from being killed.
There you go. So how is it that Jesus got to Egypt?
By his father.
And his mother? Because the night in which Jesus was born, the wise men didn't show up. Where did the wise men show up? When Jesus and Joseph and Mary were living in a house, not a cave. Some 2 to 3 years later.
He was just scratching his head.
Oh, you're just scratching your head. It was a new tomb that Joseph of Arimathea put Jesus in. There would be then no question about any mistaken identity of which tomb was empty, being new, nobody had been in there. This new tomb was a token of Christ's kingship. And since Christ had reordered the lives of his mother and John the disciple, the relationship of Jesus to those who were united or invited to be with him showed that they could begin in a new family by burial. And those of whom Jesus would be speaking about are they who would never die again. Joseph and Nicodemus had involved themselves in coming out in the open. Would they have done that normally? The whole time that Jesus was here on the earth. Nick came to him one night. When did Joe show up? He never had the courage. But when Jesus died, all of a sudden Joseph of Arimathea showed up. Why? Bobby? Why did Joseph of Arimathea show up? If he was afraid of the Jews that they'd kill him for believing in Jesus while he was alive, what was Joseph of Arimathea preaching when he came to Pilate? That Jesus was going to be king of Israel. Now we miss that a lot because we don't see why that Joseph of Arimathea, and who came with him that night? Nicodemus. And when they came, the fear had been removed from their hearts. Why? Because the prophecy of the Old Testament had been fulfilled, that no longer did they question or doubt that Jesus was going to establish his kingdom. They came to Jesus to give him a proper burial. When they came to give him a proper burial, they made sure that they brought clothing and they wrapped him in swaddling clothes. He was naked. It was against Roman law to crucify somebody with their clothes on. It is said in 3 or 4 places it was against Jewish law to put somebody on a cross with clothes on. Why? Because the Old Testament had prophesied, cursed is every man that hangs on the tree. You did not give a cursed man a fitting burial. They brought with them 75 pounds of spices, which was no doubt packed under and around the body, or in the strips of linen with which they had wrapped his body. And this was all set to stop the smell and the decay that would not ever come about. But as normal men with a normal understanding, they thought that they were doing the Lord a favor, not knowing that the body in which Jesus had been housed, or Christ, would never see decay. They didn't need that 75 pounds. This was to set a smell of decay at its distance and to preserve the body, because they thought in 2 or 3 days the body would stink. Now, we have another incident in John the 11th chapter of the death of Lazarus. When Lazarus died, they buried him in a cave, in a tomb. How did they preserve the life or the body of Lazarus? Exactly. So when Jesus came to raise him from the dead, what did his sister Martha say? Behold, now, Lord, he stinketh. When he came forth, how was he clothed? Bound in swaddling clothes and linen over that. You see, this is the manner in which they who would be handling the body of somebody they loved would make possible. But when Jesus was taken off the cross, all they did was wrap him in the swaddling clothes. I asked you the other night, why is it that the linen clothing that Joseph has put him in was off and laying at his head? That's right. To prove that the Shroud of Turin is a hoax. All right. It was Friday, the day of preparation. And on that Friday, Israel was buried. In Genesis 50, Chronicles 16, there had not been the preparation of the body to pour the perfume that Mary had done beforehand when she washed his feet with her tears and bathed his feet in perfume. You remember what Jesus said when Mary did that? This is done against the day of my death. When I die, there won't be time for this to be done. Had they noted any spark of life in him when they took him down from the tree, they would not have buried him. You see, taking him down from the tree sounds like a cruel, mocking thing. But had the Romans taken him down from the tree, somebody could have said, I saw an eye open, or I saw a finger raised. So what they did was put themselves in a position that nobody could blame them. You want him? You take him. Why could Joseph claim him? Well, the order of the family relationship had changed. Jesus said, now, those who make up my... Well, remember when Mary and his brothers came to get him one day while he was teaching and preaching, and somebody hollered out to Jesus, hey, behold, thy mother and thy brethren are without, and they desire to speak unto thee. What was Jesus' answer? Yeah, you're my mothers. You're my brothers. Those who, I'm going to rechange this whole structure. And at the cross, he starts with Mary and John. Jesus was still going to be the first fruits of them who would be part of a family that had never been before. A family that would die, but would die no more. No one could deny this was the thing that was involved when these incidences of occurrences are shown because this is how you will know him. What was it the angel told the shepherds? You'll recognize him by these two things. Now, Jesus was wrapped in swaddling clothes. Everybody said, well, you wrap him in swaddling clothes, and I know we wrap him in blankets today and all that, and that's pretty good, and babies love it. My wife keeps telling me that, and I know because I had 2 or 3 at least. And we'd wrap them in those swaddling clothes and lap them real quiet, and they'd get warm, and they'd go to sleep, and boy, how glad we were when that finally got there. But the swaddling clothes were not for comfort. They were a sign that Jesus was going to be taking a journey. Now, you say, well, did Mary know that? No, I don't know that she did. I don't know that she really didn't. I just know that those clothes that she wrapped Jesus in were those that she came up with, so that if something happened to her or Joseph on the long journey, they'd have a way to preserve the body till they could get to a place of honor where it could be buried. Jesus was born in the same kind of clothes in which he died. The angels made particular mention of swaddling clothes as a sign that that person that they would be looking for would be in those clothes. He was born to die. The very incident that took place at his birth is explained by the clothing that he wore. In the Middle East, distances were often met with many problems, and when the journey would be long, they would wrap a thin gauze-like cloth around the waist many, many, many times. And if someone died on the journey, the gauze-like material would be taken and put, because it was cloth already there, that was wrapped around the body, and the swaddling clothes would be long, narrow strips that they could wrap tightly around anything or any part of the body, so that until the body could be buried, it was in some sense prepared. The swaddling clothes foreshadowed Christ's death. It showed the price that he was willing to pay for his church. The word swaddle means dying. Swaddling means in the act of dying. And as the manger was a place of feeding those who had no way to know the truth or the Word of God, as like animals, had no way for them to be fed the Word of God, the Word of life. So the emblems that were shown in the birth of Jesus emphasized at the very beginning of his existence on this earth in a human body who he was and what he was. The swaddling clothes foreshadowed his death. It also showed the price he would pay to purchase his church.
You think that she wrapped herself in swaddling clothes in case she died on the journey?
Uh-huh.
That, in my mind, that means that she doubted the Lord in the first place.
No, it was her means of trying to follow what she had always been taught for people on a long journey who were going to try to... See, if she...
It was because if she was having a baby, she would die.
Yeah, but see, she could die, and if the baby was born, there would be no reason for her to not have done the job she was asked to do. Now I'm going to ask you another question.
Promised her that she would live.
Right. So what other woman died so that Christ could be born? Israel. She was really a symbol of Israel. That at the moment Jesus was born, what did you need with Israel any longer? The means through which the Messiah came had done what was asked of her to do. But it was a custom. It was something.
But the angel told her what she was going to name him. So if she was dead, she couldn't have named him.
Well, hey, when did if he also told Joseph what to name him. And there was two different names. So what? Yeah, go to Luke 2.
Well, no, yeah, I know you, but he told her also.
Yeah.
So she had to be alive to name him.
Not necessarily. When
You shall call him Jesus.
okay, when Jacob's Rachel.
He was gonna name her the son Benoni, and decided, and then the wife said, "No, you'll name him Benjamin," and then she died.
I think it's the other way around, but you're right. He flipped the name.
He was gonna name her Benoni, and she said, "No, call him Benjamin."
Yeah, that's Genesis 35, I think. Don't know why I remember it, but let's see.
One meant son of my mourning, and the other one meant son
Yeah,
of my life.
right on the money. Look here, Genesis 35. Let's start with verse 16. I'm glad you brought that up, by the way. And they journeyed from Bethel. Now, where's Bethel? That's where the house of God is. And they had gone but a little way to come to Ephrath. What was Ephrath? That's another name for Bethlehem. And Rachel travailed, and she had hard labor. And it came to pass while she was in hard labor, that the midwife said unto her, Fear not, for thou shalt have this son also. And it came to pass as her soul was in departing, which the Russellites don't believe, she died. And she called his name Benoni. But his father says, No, I'm going to call him Benjamin. And Rachel died and was buried in the way of Ephrath, which is Bethlehem. So your argument is good, only this had been done before. So whether or not, wonder what did they call him? Did they call him Jesus, or did they call him Emmanuel? Which name did the angel tell Mary to name him? No, she called him Jesus. Mary called him Jesus. What was it that Joseph was told to name him? Emmanuel. God is with us. Now let's go back and look that up, because I don't want to be wrong, and I've been wrong before, so I don't get any joy out of being wrong in any sense of the word. And you know what's more interesting in all of this? And I just love this. Who wrote the book? Who was the one who authored humanly the book of Luke? The guy that wasn't there. Isn't that just amazing? Well, anyway, so when they came back from Egypt, why did they come back? What was the return trip all about? Yeah, well, Herod died. And when Herod died, the problem was over.
It says that Joseph was afraid for them. He was afraid that the one who took over after him might do something similar.
Yeah.
Living in fear.
And so what did the angel say?
Fear not.
Yeah, fear not. That'd be a good thing. But anyway, and when the days of her purification according to the law of Moses were accomplished, verse 22 of Luke 2, they brought him to the temple to present him to the Lord. How long did Jesus stay in Judea after he was born? 8 days. Or was it 30 days? We got into this the other day about the purification of the male and the purification of the female, if you'll remember. You remember that? No? Okay. Well, anyway, it was 2 different times. I think the male took 7 or 8 days, and the female took 30. So Jesus was there, and then Herod got this wild thing. And so they took him into the temple, and they met Simeon. And by the way, when they met Simeon, they also met Anna. What tribe was Anna from? Nope. I only bring this up for a reason of interest to you. Anna was from one of the 10 lost tribes, which means that the lost tribes had not been completely dispatched and weren't serving God at all, like you are and I have been told that it would be. So here we go. He comes in and he meets Anna and he meets Simeon, and the prophecies are told relating him. But the point I was trying to show you is that what happened in Jesus' birth is what took place in Jesus' death. Now, to me, I think, maybe I'm wrong, that makes it kind of plain as to what Jesus had on when they took him to put him in Joseph of Arimathea. By the way, they tell me in study that Joseph of Arimathea had new money, but that Nicodemus was from old money. Know what that means? Well, according to what they say in the business world, if you got new money, you didn't inherit it. You've not had it long. It's just been made. You got old money, it goes back generations. And if you ever don't think that makes a difference, you go to try to borrow some money. If you from old money, they're a lot quicker to give it to you. You from new money, we don't know if you're going to make it, son. You know, this just be something that takes place. Well, anyway, so Herod dies and Jesus returns. When Jesus returns, where does he come to? Where his daddy lived. Only he wasn't his father, he was his stepfather. Where is it that Joseph left to come to Bethlehem? Remember, I asked you to remember the name. Nazareth. Well, of course, Mary was from Nazareth too, but was that her land of her nativity? No. What tribe was Mary from? A Levite. What was the town of the Levites' nativity? None. The Levites didn't have land. The Levites were given some crop stuff, or land around the temple and the synagogues and stuff to grow some beans and taters. But as far as owning land, who was supposed to take care of them? The children of it. Yeah, the other tribes of Israel. Interesting, isn't it? So all these events show that of nothing else, what took place. Now we'll go back to John 19, and we won't be here much longer. But we go back to John 19, and we get to John 19, we get to Matthew 27, we can get to all these other places, and there's 4 or 5 places to go. You'll see that there's things that now all of a sudden say something that maybe didn't say anything before. For instance, somebody look at Mark 15:46. Somebody look at John 19:40. And then, of course, Luke 23:50 through 36. And you'll see with John 19 that all of these correspond to the same truth. Yes, ma'am?
So can you assume that Mary used the same spices she was given when he was born to help Joseph of Arimathea prepare it?
I have no idea. I can tell you that the wise men brought. Yeah. And how old was Jesus when the wise man showed up in Nazareth? He was 2 or 3 years old. Probably, like she keeps saying, 3. And I agree. Just the fact that it's very interesting that they have the wise men showing up when they... I thought, boy, we got a crowd there. This ain't like a Church of Christ. You don't have a crowd there. But you got a crowd there. You got... How many of those shepherds were in the field watching their flocks by night? We don't know. Well, who employed the shepherds? The Sanhedrin. Why were the Sanhedrin having shepherds in the field with flocks? It's good money to supply these sacrifices. And you ain't going to miss out on $1. So they had this land that was available. They hired these shepherds. They stuck them out in the field. And this was according to the period of time when this supposedly Passover was coming up. And they could sell them. And that's the reason they were there. We got a better idea on the time Jesus is born than we do on when he died. I don't know. Can you help me out there? 17. I don't have any idea. There wasn't enough of one of them. There weren't enough of them to get in their way, so they couldn't follow that star. And it's like my wife said. I was talking about these 3 things that made the birth of Jesus different than anybody else. She said, "How many people do you know that has a star leading to his place of birth?" That's kind of neat, you know. Well, the trouble is the star didn't go to his place of birth, did it? No, it went to where he was. Jesus had been a traveling baby by that time. How far it was from where they were to Bethlehem, from Bethlehem to Egypt, and then from Egypt back to Nazareth, I haven't run the mileage. But in that length of time, there wasn't too many babies that had parents that would have made such a trip. That's the reason that the swaddling clothes are brought to our attention. In and of the fact also that that was the clothing that was put on people in their grave. If you're here and need to respond to the invitation, number 553 is the hymn that's selected. 553.